Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new edition of The Save Point. I'm your host, Shepard.
And I am your co-host, Joker. How's it going, buddy? All good?
All good here. How are you doing, my friend?
Living the dream, man. Living the dream. Really looking forward to kicking off into a brand new episode for the podcast series that we have going on Spotify and YouTube. It's good to be back doing it again.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've done the last episode, and we're gonna take things in a slightly new direction today for a change, because that's kind of how we do things. We try something twice, and then we move on and we do something else.
So what's on the agenda?
Today's episode is a bit different. I'll be the kind of I'll be the kind of chair, I suppose, the chairperson for this episode. I'm gonna torture Joker somewhat. So
I can't wait.
Yeah, we've been back and forth on kind of how we want to talk about stuff for a while now. And we came up with this idea, essentially. It's a very straightforward concept of just, let's talk about blank. So the topic can be anything. It can be, what's our favorite game series? What's going on in the landscape of video games right now? What's our opinion on certain debates in the industry and stuff like that? It's essentially just a chance for us to sit down and talk about anything. Now, part of the fun is that in this particular episode, I know what the subject is going to be, and Joker doesn't. Now we'll do an episode where the roles are reversed. It's part of the fun. Is just it keeps us on our toes. It kind of keeps the flow natural. There's not a lot of prep goes into this. So Joker has no clue at all.
I'm going in blind. Yeah. And it's interesting though, because like a lot of the other things that we did do, especially with like the more heavy retros, they weren't scripted, but like we knew what we were going to talk about. So this one is kind of like, okay, I haven't a clue what the topic is going to be. So everything is going to be our most truthful opinions and things like this. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm eager to see what happens now.
You'll regret that. No, not at all. It's I wanted to pick something as a subject that's a bit kind of in line with how we've done episodes in the past of things, while at the same time not being like a retrospective. Essentially, Joker. That's not, you don't have a real name. Let's talk about Mass Effect.
Okay, Mass Effect. Well, I'm actually going through another playthrough of it right now at the moment. And Mass Effect was actually the game that you introduced me to it. Now, I must give some context here. I had heard of Mass Effect, but because I didn't have, I had it on the Xbox. I had an Xbox 360, but I could never find the game itself. So in reality, my first introduction to Mass Effect was the second game, and I hadn't a fucking clue what was going on. I didn't understand what a Geth was. I didn't understand who Saren was. I didn't get what was going on. But it's one of those, I suppose, if we're talking about the trilogy itself as a whole, I haven't experienced anything like it. It's so character driven. Like, you can put so much of your own personality into the protagonist of Commander Shepard. You can make them more, I suppose, what's the word I'm looking for? You can make them more paragon. So they're very like by the books. Eat your vitamins, drink your milk, say your prayers, all that kind of thing. Or you can choose to make them more of the renegade option, which is more of like the bad guy, I suppose, or the bad woman, because you can choose to play as male or female, or you can have them somewhere in the middle. But I suppose what keeps me coming back to Mass Effect is the characters. I'm sure you'll agree with me on this.
Yeah.
There's a wealth of different characters that you come across, and they're all different species as well. You yourself are playing as a member of the Human Alliance. But the characters that you come across, Garrus Vicarian, for an example, is a Turian. Tali is a Quarian. And it's fantastic. It really is. Even the score itself is so bloody memorable. But I played the second one first. That was my first introduction to the game. to the actual series.
Okay, sorry. I have a question for you already about that.
Yeah,
So obviously, the original Mass Effect was eventually ported to PlayStation 3 as part of the trilogy bundle.
yeah,
When Mass Effect
the
2,
Legacy Edition or something, wasn't it? That's what it was called.
well, that was a later thing, I think. The Legendary Edition, that was the remasters, I think. Maybe I'm wrong.
Oh, okay, okay.
But yeah, the PS3 did get Mass Effect 1
Mm,
at a later date when
yeah,
after the third game had come out. Genius. Um, but because of that, if you played Mass Effect 2 first, back when it came out in 2010,
yeah.
you also had to pay extra for the 15-minute prequel comic, wasn't it?
That's
There was
right.
like a thing. Yeah, it allowed you to kind of make some of the key decisions from Mass Effect 1, which would then
Yeah,
allow you to have some of those decisions carry into Mass Effect 2. But the fact that it was a paid DLC for a game that, like, okay, we haven't actually released the first one on this system.
yeah. It's a bit predatory. I think
Yeah,
it has EA written all over it.
yeah.
Um, Now, I I didn't get a chance to play that title when they brought out the first game for the PS3 after the third game came out. I never got a chance to play it. Anytime I tried to get it on the PSN network, it was just constantly unavailable, and I couldn't find a physical copy for the longest time. And then I managed to get my hands on a copy of it for the Xbox 360, and I must admit, going from Mass Effect 2 down to Mass Effect 1, it was just, I was like, what the hell am I playing? This is janky ass. The controls were just so confusing to me. And it's, it's not that there was a problem with the controller itself. It was how the buttons were ported to the actual, you know what I mean? Like it was how it was just, I couldn't do it. Like, and the Mako itself was such a, it was like you were a deer on ice skates trying to fucking control this thing, you know? But I must admit to you though, like because the second one was the first one that I played, I shelved it for the longest time because I didn't know what the fuck was going on. And I remember specifically asking you questions about this, like, okay, what is going on here? Because I just couldn't do it. And I don't know if I just got a bad copy of the game, but there was you got a couple of the DLCs included, like the Lair of the Shadow Broker, the mission that you do specifically with Liara,
Hmm.
and you get the Project Overlord mission, which is like a Cerberus kind of splinter mission that you can do. And I don't know what it was, but like when I played Project Overlord for the first time, it just looked so dirty in the sense like the pixels for the ground just looked like a linear block of squares just patched onto it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
There was a lot of texture issues with that DLC, and I'm kind of glad I played it first, like that actual DLC first, and got it out of the way. Because if I played it at a later time in the game, I would have been like, this is such a low point for me. Maybe it's just a bad copy that I got or something like that. I don't know. Um, but when the Legendary Edition came out, or the Legacy Edition, whatever one it was, where they ported all three of them together, um, you can certainly see that they paid a lot of attention to the first game. That was I think the one out of the three that needed a good lick of paint. What do you think?
Oh yeah, for sure. And I think that was the general consensus as well when the Legendary Edition remasters came out. Was Mass Effect 1, I think, was the big one people were asking about. They were kind of like, how much of a facelift is that going to get? Is it going to be brought more in line with 2 and 3? Because I think with Mass Effect, with the trilogy, and by the way, when I brought up Mass Effect as the topic, we will be talking about another Mass Effect game outside of the trilogy, by the way. um, for me, the Mass Effect trilogy is kind of broken up this way. So Mass Effect 1 is the best RPG. Mass Effect
Yeah,
2 is the best campaign, like beginning to end story and DLC. And Mass Effect 3 is the best third person action kind of gameplay feel.
yeah, yeah,
Each one has its own strengths and merits and stuff like that. Now, I would say I find Mass Effect 2 to be my favorite. And I think I've mentioned this before. Because, as you said, like the characters and the world, and it was just gorgeous. And I think something else I've mentioned on the channel before is that I played it at the right time when
yeah,
I was a bit younger, and I played it for the first time. I played it after they announced Mass Effect 3, and I had
Okay.
never played Mass Effect before. I had gotten Mass Effect 1 as a gift, and I was like, this isn't for me.
Yeah.
And then Mass Effect 2 came out, and someone else recommended it highly. They were like, man, you got to play that game. So after the Mass Effect 3 teaser trailer came out where there's a soldier in war torn London, I was like, okay, I'll give it a look. So I
Yeah.
played Mass Effect 2. Uh, and I was totally lost as well. I was like, who's this Archangel guy? Like, why is everybody, why are they creaming their pants over this guy? Like, what is going on? It's pretty fun, I guess. And I got the game secondhand. I didn't buy it new.
Yeah.
So I didn't get the access to any of the DLC or anything up front. So then I went back and replayed or reattempted Mass Effect 1 and fell in love with it. I was like, oh my God, the world building, the characters, all of that, phenomenal.
Yeah.
Um, and I replayed Mass Effect 2 again after playing Mass Effect 1 for the first time because I was like, now I can kind of feel the flow of the character arcs and stuff like that. So it fit better. And then I was ready for Mass Effect 3 and I bought that day one. I bought the collector's edition. 2012, I think it was March. I was
Yeah.
there at GameStop picking up my pre-order like a fool. Um, and like I still have my everything from my collector's edition of Mass Effect 3 here,
Oh yeah.
because that shit was precious to me. I love it. And I
Yeah.
like as poor as Mass Effect 3's ending was,
Mm.
um, I still have a soft spot for the game as a whole. I think it does more right than it does wrong.
Yeah, I'd be inclined to agree with you there. The thing that I find about Mass Effect 3 is, I think I've spoken to you about this before. It suffers very, very heavily with what I call the Star Wars effect. And what I
Yeah.
mean by that is, um, okay, you think about the movie Rogue One, for example, um, and people who have seen that movie, I ask you, okay, well, what was your favorite part of that movie? Oh, definitely when Darth Vader appears at the end and goes absolutely ham on those rebel fighters. Okay, that was cool. That was like the last 20 minutes is what you remember. What else do you like? Oh, well, the characters were pretty cool. Yeah, okay, I get that. What else? Oh, well, the music was amazing. Yeah, the music was amazing. What else? Oh, well, like unfortunately, like with Mass Effect 3, and we will touch on this, I'm sure, at a later stage as well. Um, as good of a game that it was, I found that they were trying to tie up so many loose ends in a singular title from two previous titles. Like,
Mm.
my biggest issue with Mass Effect 3 is how quickly everything was kind of stapled together. Like, in 2 or 3 missions, maybe 4 missions, the whole inborn hatred between the Turians, the Krogan, and the Solarians is completely salvaged. It's tied together. They're just like, oh, we forgive you for all that shit that you did. We forgive you for using a bioweapon to sterilize our entire breed. It's totally fine. Don't worry, we're all good. We've got to fight the Reapers. And it's like, it came across that it was too quick that everything was sorted. Like the whole thing with the Quarians and the Geth, like they're infighting. Everything was just it came together too quickly. And maybe it was because BioWare were under such serious pressure from EA to get this out the fucking door
Mm.
because they knew it would sell, that they were quickly trying to tie up loose ends. Or I think that the whole story would have been better as 4 games. And that's
Oh,
just my
okay.
opinion. I think that having a trilogy where you
Mm.
have to tie up everything, like you're like when you're trying to put everything in one big pot, something is going to overspill or an ingredient is going to be added that will spoil everything. And I think that BioWare were trying to just tie up so much alien politics and patch everything up and move on to the next big objective, which was essentially stopping the Reapers. I'm not too sure if you feel the same way, but
I kind of see
um,
what you mean. Yeah, I suppose it feels like they're kind of like, oh, we kind of need everyone on side to beat the Reapers, and that's kind of Shepard's character. They're a Shepherd, and they're corralling all the alien races together in this act of defiance of the Reapers. And I think I get the idea is that
yeah,
your character is so good at what they do that they bring all these people together. But I think you're right as well in some sense that Like, for example, there are Solarians and Turians near the end of the game who are still like, no, don't cure the genophage. That's a bad idea.
Yeah,
And that's fine. Like,
yeah,
that's good because it's like all the Solarians aren't just one person.
yeah.
Um, but because
But they're
Morden,
being represented by the Dalatras, who's
yeah,
on the council. And she's like, listen, if you don't cure the genophage, I will personally send you my best fleet and my top STG soldiers in your fight against the Reapers. And then
yeah.
it brings up that moral dilemma of, oh shit, like curing the genophage is the
But
right,
then,
it's the right thing to
like,
do, but it
there's
might not pay off for me.
yeah. But see, that's kind of the problem I found was that decision of, as you said, the Solarian Dalatrus is like, yo, if you don't want to cure the genophage, we'll help you out in the long run. But if you do cure the genophage, it completely offsets any potential consequence of not having the Solarians on board. It
Yeah,
feels like there's no real consequence to that decision.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
I because the like a big thing is like as you were saying earlier, the system in Mass Effects 1, 2, and 3 is Paragon Renegade, and it's generally fairly binary. You either are good or you're bad. Occasionally, something in the middle.
yeah,
And I think Mass Effect 3 tried in concept to show it's not all black and white. It's not all good and bad.
mm.
So there are legitimate arguments made in not necessarily in favor of the genophage. The genophage was terrible and shouldn't have happened. But
Was it
there
though?
are oh
See, like that's it. Like I'm not talking like I'm not. I'm obviously not saying oh you should definitely sterilize an entire fucking race of alien just because they got
rowdy.
a little bit rowdy with the Krogan rebellions. But like the Turians and the Solarians had no problem dropping in a load of Krogan against the Rachni in the Rachni Wars. And then when the Krogan wanted independence, the Solarians and the Turians quickly found out like yeah they're breeding at an uncontrollable rate. Right now at this rate they'll probably want to take over the galaxy. We got to do something. So it was a step that they took to preserve life to suit them. But it's that moral quandary, though. It's
Yeah,
kind of like, was it the right thing or did they do the right thing? And you can actually see it in the second one when you're doing Morden's loyalty mission. You have to go back to Chichanka and find a Solarian scientist called I think his name was Malin or something like that, where
yeah.
he's trying to reverse engineer the genophage. And
To cure it.
Morden, yeah, Morden has that I suppose that doctorial kind of attitude where it's like, no, we had to do this. There's no other choice. Ran so many tests, always pointed towards the genophage. And even when he sees the body of a Krogan female, he starts to question things like, this was a pointless waste of life. And you, as Commander Shepard, say, it sounds like you have some regret there, Morden. And Morden says, no, no regret, no regret. Ran so many tests, all probability pointed towards genophage, had to be done. And Shepard says, but is that just what your knowledge is telling you, or is that what your heart is telling you? So I always found in Mass Effect there was all that underneath everything. There was always a kind of a humanic debate going on between the characters, or political debates going on between the characters. More so in the second game, I found. I know in the first game that the council are just a pain in the back teeth. Um, and the only reason why they made you a Spectre in the first place was to hunt down Saren. They never trusted you in the first place.
Yeah,
But in the second game, then I think it was as you said, you're kind of rallying this team together on a suicide mission that you're probably not going to come back from. And even the person who's giving you the dossiers and the orders, the elusive man, he has his own hidden agenda going on as well. Like he wants to study the Reapers and use their tech in order to fight against them, which is kind of like a nice callback or a nod to what Saren's objective really was. He wanted to harness the powers of the Reapers in order to control them. So he thought what he was doing was the right way of doing things. But in reality, it was like you were literally snuffing out life just for your cause. But the Solarians did the exact same thing with the Krogans when they
yeah,
sterilized them. But I don't know, man. It was just like I think out of the three, the second game will be my favorite, and I will always play that one over 1 and 3.
yeah.
It's not to decry either entry, far from it. I think there are some amazing moments in Mass Effect 1, and even more so in Mass Effect 3, like the attack on London immediately in that opening. I mean, my God, how do you open a game like that? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally agree. The music for Leaving Earth and everything still hits me hard. Um, and yeah, again, it's one of those things I think of. I think of them all as a whole. You know that they are. It's the Mass Effect trilogy, which I can go back and play any of them individually. But if I'm going back to Mass Effect, the chances are I'm doing it one, two, three.
Oh,
Um,
really? Okay.
yeah, I don't know. It's just one of those things where I'm kind of like that progression through the story and the universe and stuff like that. I just love the feeling
Do you
of
feel like
going
you have
through
to
them.
play it though?
Now,
Like that you have to play one,
kind of,
two, and
yeah, a
three?
little bit.
Yeah, yeah,
It's almost
okay.
like to me they're just one long game.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, there's major gameplay differences from entry to entry.
Oh, they're huge.
Mass Effect One has entire like areas for you to actually explore, something that's not really there in two and three very much, particularly in three. Three was
Three is
very
so
linear.
linear.
Yeah,
So
and like
linear.
it works for what it is. When you think about the fact that they focused more on combat and stuff like that in three, that's because, well, yeah, you're at war.
Yeah.
That's always the way the story was going. So you can't really fault BioWare for focusing more on the third person like shooter kind of action gameplay because they knew it would make up the bulk of the game.
Yeah.
I just think the actual RPG elements kind of took a hit because of it. Um,
Mm.
like one thing I notice is in generally speaking, the decisions you make in the games don't have largely like impactful consequences on your character or the characters around you. I'm actually replaying Mass Effect 2 at the moment, having replayed Mass Effect 1 a couple of months back.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a scene after you've completed Miranda and Jack's loyalty missions
Mm.
where they start going at it in the Normandy.
Oh,
And
yeah.
if you have enough Paragon points, you can basically tell them cop the fuck on, both of them. Other than that, you have to make a decision to side with one or the other. And it feels like, oh, I have enough. I've leveled up this thing enough that that's not an issue for me anymore. Generally speaking, by default, most people go Paragon. That's been statistically proven. Like BioWare shared the figures for it. It's apparently like I may be pulling this figure out of my ass, but like 92% of people do Paragon on a first time playthrough.
Yeah, I think I saw that as well, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, which makes sense. People aren't inherently horrible. Um, so as a result of that, it's like, well, you by default you'll get most of the points required to essentially just circumnavigate that issue, and you don't have to deal with any fallout because of it. And in
Yeah.
Mass Effect 2, which is a game about the fact that you're supposed to build these relationships, and maybe on your first playthrough you don't quite get everything, you don't quite save everyone, which is a great feeling in a really horrible kind of way. You finish the game, you're like, oh shit, like two or three of my crew died,
Yeah.
and the fact
Permadeath.
that that's on you is very impactful. But it doesn't. I think my issue is that it doesn't stem from a decision you made. It's from your bar not being high enough.
That's a good point, actually, because
Does that make sense?
it does. It does. And just talking about that scene when Jack and Miranda are about to smash each other's heads in, um, I specifically remember that if you chose to side with one of them, the other person, even I think if your bar level wasn't high enough, they would die in the last mission. Um, that happened to me on my first playthrough, actually. As a matter of fact, on my first playthrough of Mass Effect 2, when I first played the game, I did no loyalty missions and everyone died. And I was kind of like, oh, bugger. Well, that's not good. Um, but you're right though. Like, it's very easy to just with the way that the dialogue wheel is. If you're going solely on, I'm going to be the best of the best. I'm just going to be a paragon all the way through. You can just point at one part of the dialogue wheel and just hold X down, or maybe hit the L2 trigger when it comes up for the QTE to do like a paragon move or something like that. So I find that it's very, very easy to kind of, you know, it's very, very easy to manipulate the game to your style, which more power to you if you want to do that. And I don't have a problem with the dialogue wheel at all. I thought that it was actually quite a clever little thing. Um, but I don't know, like it kind of felt that like your actions didn't really make that much of an impact in Mass Effect 3 because now you have the reputation meter. So I think that's what BioWare were looking to do. Like they kind of looked at the second game and said, right, well, if you if you were just solely doing a Paragon playthrough, you'd never get the chance to make a Renegade option on the left hand side of the dialogue wheel itself, where it's all in red and it's all in blue. If you're either one or the other, unless you manage to max out both of them, so you're missing out on dialogue. So in Mass Effect 3, when they brought in the reputation meter, it kind of
That was a big issue with Mass Effect.
say again.
Yeah, like that was a problem with Mass Effect 3, wasn't it? Was the reputation meter, because it was okay. You're building assets through the game's campaign, but then they also tied it into that fucking multiplayer thing.
They tied it into multiplayer.
Yeah, so your war readiness, or whatever it was called,
Yeah.
was tied into the game's multiplayer on the original release.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So I don't know if you ever touched the co-op in Mass Effect 3.
I think I played like 20 minutes of it and said, yeah, okay, this is not doing it for me.
I actually really enjoyed it at the time, probably because it was the first time you could actually play as different races.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
You could play as a Krogan or a Solarian or a Geth or a Quarian, whatever. Like, I thought that was really cool. Or maybe you couldn't play as Geth, I don't remember. But it was a great
Turian,
concept.
I think you could play as.
Yeah, Turians, yeah. And like they were different classes and everything, and like the missions were fairly straightforward. Now the missions were usually like, it was basically horde mode from like Gears of War. And you had like objectives in between every few rounds. And the actual maps were reused in the game's story as well. There are certain little side missions you can do which take place on these multiplayer maps.
Right. Okay.
Which is fine, whatever. They had a very tight turnaround to make that game.
Yeah.
But it was such a fucking EA thing to do, where they were like, we're gonna milk the thing where people have to pay extra money to buy shit. I think I'm pretty sure it had microtransactions and like it was like
I wouldn't be surprised.
It was like a prequel to their Battlefront monetization system.
Oh yeah.
And again, like I enjoyed the gameplay for what it was. I remember playing some really fun, tense online games with other people, because I think the gameplay in Mass Effect 3 was so strong that it translated very well to that multiplayer co-op thing. But tying that directly into the single player was a huge mistake. Because...
So would you get more war assets then or something, or how did that work?
Yeah, I think it was maybe not the war assets. It was something. I think it was your war readiness goes up or down depending on how successful you are in online missions.
But then what's the point in doing the rest of the...
As far as I'm aware, could get to...
What's the point in continuing on with the game if you're just going to be playing multiplayer just to get war assets?
Let's not forget as well that this was at the time EA were doing online passes.
Oh, God,
so that you could play the online content. So certain parts of the main story were locked behind a paywall, essentially. Or maybe not like part of unlocking the ending, the better endings for the game were locked behind this online pass, because it's like, oh, well, if you want to make sure your war assets are high enough. Again, I might be skewing the details slightly in memory, because
it sounds like you're right, though.
Yeah, well, I'm playing the much better remaster on the PS4, which took that shit out.
Yeah.
Which is a shame, because I enjoyed that mode a lot. Like, I think on its own, isolated from the campaign,
it works.
I think it was a fun idea. Everything was adding multiplayer around that era anyway.
Yeah.
And if I was in my head, I was like, if it's not taking anything away from the main campaign, that's fine. But it was, because they were locking a part of the progression behind a fucking paywall. And it's as you said, it's so EA. And that really should have tipped us off as like, oh, we can't trust these fuckers going forward. They've earned their worst company in America award a few times now.
That was one of my biggest issues with the From Ashes DLC. Like, yeah. I'm sorry, like that whole fucking thing was just like, are you kidding me? Like, it's paid DLC to unlock Javik, who also has unique dialogue options with you when you take him out on missions. Like, and don't get me wrong, it was cool to see like the Reapers invading. What planet was it that you found Javik on? It was Eden Prime. But you
Yeah, you go
saw,
back to Eden Prime.
yeah, like you saw from Javik's point of view, like just how merciless these killing machines were. And I don't know, I like Javik as a character. I think he's kind of cool, but again, it goes back to them just hurrying things along. Like I, I didn't understand why all of a sudden we had a Prothean on our squad. It just didn't click.
Yeah,
If he's the last Prothean, I can kind of understand that and how he would want to like take the fight against the Reapers 50,000 years later. Totally get that. Vengeance is a beautiful thing, but it just didn't click with me. Like it's just, of course you had to bring in a Prothean. Like we had this discussion I think a few days ago or whenever it was when we were kind of discussing when you are chasing Saren and you end up on Ilos and because that's where the beam of the conduit is. I think it was something like that. And you have that chat with the Vigil AI who tells you that one by one we had to put all of our top scientists, doctors, generals, soldiers in these stasis pods, and in order to conserve energy, we had to shut them down one by one and whatever. But
yeah,
if you look close enough, there's these statues of these Prometheus looking bastards in these kind of thrones with wires and stuff coming out of their mouths and their eyes. And for the longest time, I
yeah.
think people thought that those were actually Protheans. They were the Inu Sanin. They were a race before the Protheans. So Javik is cool, don't get me wrong, but I would have liked to see if we were going to bring back an alien race from 50,000 years or 100,000 years ago. I would have preferred to see like the likes of somebody from the Inu Sanin or there's another race called the Jatil, which were the Geth kind of machine beings before the Protheans. I thought it would have been cool to like that would have given me more incentive. Like I want to find out more about you, and I can't wait to do your loyalty mission. Or if you do get a mission by yourself, that'd be pretty sick. But I don't know. Like the third game, as much as I enjoy it, and it's the best looking out of them all.
Oh, for sure.
Like the gunplay is outstanding. The facial animations are just they're so tight. But I don't know. It just seemed like EA were looming over an already exhausted and stretched out team, and we're just like, come on, crunch time,
Yo, for
keep
sure.
it going. Um, I'm not sure how
Completely
you
agree.
feel. You know, I'm not sure how you feel about that.
Well, that's the thing is a developer and a publisher. They're two very different things. You know, EA is the publisher, BioWare is the developer, and BioWare were clearly very passionate about the Mass Effect franchise. They wanted to do right by the story, but they had 2 years to develop a 40-hour RPG on multiple systems, as well as plan for DLC, because DLC was the done thing at the time, big expansions. So they also had to include Javik as like a Javik was a fucking pre-order bonus.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
it's like
yeah,
don't lock a character like whatever your opinions on Javik as a character are and how he fits into the narrative and stuff like that. As you were saying, it's kind of a big deal to have someone who was there the last time the Reapers invaded, but they
yeah.
put him behind a fucking paywall.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like if it was a thing where 3 months or 6 months after release they were like we've added a new character with his own side story and all this kind of shit. No, here he is. He's on disc DLC. You have to pay extra or like buy the deluxe edition, pre-order the game, all that crap. And outside of that initial mission with him, he doesn't really contribute much. He only really interacts with Liara. He occasionally has comments on like the beats of the story and stuff like that. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like Javik was just there. Like you don't miss him
Yeah,
if you don't have him.
it just like I didn't understand like why. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, and a lot of the time he just like if you don't have him on your squad, he hangs out in the Normandy and he says how he's still very, I suppose, holier than thou. I guess extremely xenophobic still. Like yeah, even when Liara is talking to him first, she says, "So tell me about your people. What were they like?" And he says, "They're dead. What does it matter?" Um, Now I can get that that's just his character, how he's like a battle hardened soldier and he's just full of hatred and vengeance. I just didn't understand why it had to be a Protean. And that just could be down to writers saying, "Oh, we have to have him in here because this was like the last of his kind, and he was there the last time the Reapers invaded, and it'd be an interesting character in that aspect." But I suppose I don't mind paying for the Leviathan DLC.
That was very good DLC though. That was substantial. You went to multiple locations. You there was reason to get it. Like it built on the lore and the worlds and stuff like that. Now it is a bit shitey that they locked the race that essentially created the Reapers
Yeah,
behind a paywall.
yeah,
But because I think it's a substantial amount of content, it doesn't bother me as much. It's like, okay, cool, I get it. There was a lot there. Maybe it didn't make the cut at the game's release, or maybe it's something they wanted to have. Again, BioWare probably wanted all this in the game, but EA, being the ones with the money and having the final say on what ships out with the product, probably were like, no, let's cut that chunk out, make it its own thing. Let's cut that chunk out, make it its own thing.
yeah. That way, if people really want it, they'll pay for it. Because fuck you, give me money, EA. That kind of thing.
Exactly, yeah.
Like, even going back to Mass Effect 2, like the From Ashes DLC, that should not have been a DLC. I'm sorry, it shouldn't have been. That is a core reason as to why you're on trial in Mass Effect 3.
Oh, you
One,
mean the Arrival
the
DLC?
Arrival, oh, I beg your pardon, the Arrival DLC, that's what it was. I got the two mixed up there.
Oh yeah, that is vital to the story of Mass
Yeah,
Effect 3's intro. Like, why
yeah,
why the fuck is Shepard on trial? If
yeah.
you haven't played that DLC, well, fuck you. You'll never find out.
Exactly, exactly. And it's also the first time that Shepard has a one-on-one confrontation with Harbinger. Well, Harbinger as an AI,
Yeah,
that kind of thing, much like he did with Sovereign. But that should not have been DLC. And it goes back again to the whole paywall thing. Like the first time that I played the Legacy Edition for the PS4, I had never gotten Zaid in the first release of the game. I had never gotten him. And even when you could buy his story on the Play Store, it was never available. So I didn't get a chance to play the Arrival DLC or Zaid stuff. Now, granted, I can take Zaid with. I'm kind of hit and miss on that guy. I don't know. I'm not the biggest fan of I'm the gruff mercenary. I'm this. I'm that. It's just yeah, okay. You're just another squad member. Sit down, shut up, and go play with your toys. But when it comes to the Arrival DLC, it's like no, that is legitimately like such an important part of Shepard's story and the Reaper's story,
yeah,
um, which then kind of opens the indoctrination theory as well, because Shepard has been dealing with Reaper tech and Reaper artifacts for so many years now that it opens up the debate of, well, was he finally given into the Reapers in Mass Effect 3? But I don't think Mass Effect 1 had DLC to it.
it had a couple.
Oh yeah, I never
Yeah,
knew this.
there was the Bring Me the Sky DLC, which was the Asteroid 57.
Oh
I
yeah,
think it's
yeah, yeah,
called,
yeah, yeah,
where
yeah.
there's an asteroid on a collision course. Yeah, that was DLC.
Really?
Um, yeah,
Oh,
it's
okay.
not it's not like a huge thing, but it's still like an extra story in the game,
Yeah,
which is cool. I like it.
yeah.
There was also a DLC that was not included in the remaster.
Really?
Something to do with the source code went missing, or I'm not entirely sure why. But essentially, it's again, it's kind of a horde mode thing where you're in kind of virtual reality environments and you're killing enemies as quickly as possible to rack up a score. That's all it is.
Oh, okay. So nothing
Uh,
too
no,
substantial then.
yeah, you're not going to miss it, kind of thing. But it was just a funny omission because when it was announced, people were kind of like, "Really?
Yeah,
That's being taken out?" I don't think it was very clear at first why. But as far as I'm aware, it's because they essentially just lost the code, or the code is corrupted, or so they couldn't physically remaster, and they weren't remaking it from scratch because fucking EA.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah. Of course.
so again, you don't miss it. Like it doesn't impact any of the story. It doesn't impact any of the characters, any of that kind of shit. So
Mm.
and like Mass Effect 3 actually has a better version of the same idea. Um, in the Citadel DLC.
Oh yeah, you can do a
Yeah,
battle royale kind of mode or something like that, isn't it? Like a
something like
horde
that.
mode.
Yeah, where
Yeah,
you're kind of just like you're fighting enemies against the clock and trying to get a high score, and it works better in
yeah,
that game. So I don't, as far as I'm concerned, don't need the original.
yeah. I think it was called
Um,
the Ariake Technology
now,
Battleground or something.
yeah, that was it. It was one of the big companies in the Mass Effect universe.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so before we move on, so a part of the fun here, as I said, was that I wanted to talk about Mass Effect in a way that's not necessarily in the style of our retrospectives and stuff. We've agreed we're moving away from the retrospective format for the time being, and this way we can kind of talk about stuff without adhering too heavily to here is the story A, B, and C. We're kind of like,
Mm,
what parts of Mass Effect kind of stuck out to us? What kind of stuff do we love about it? Now,
yeah.
for the last half an hour, we've talked about Mass Effect, the trilogy.
Oh
I think it's time
no.
we address the galaxy-sized elephant in the room.
Yep.
I think we need to talk about Mass Effect Andromeda.
Yeah. I'm gonna be. I'm gonna be.
Hang on.
Yeah, yeah. Just hang on a second. I forgot my laptop can do this thing where if I hit this button, the call hangs up. Uh, I'll be. That's. This one is a weird one for me. So I remember seeing screenshots from it actually. In like 2014 or something, or 2015. It was concept art and shit where you were looking down on the galaxy map and there was some dude wearing N7 armor, and I was like, "Oh my fucking god, they've gone and done it, haven't they?" And I think you and I had conversations about this, being like, "Well, what if it was sent during the First Contact War?" Or, "Well, what if it's not necessarily circled around Shepard and what they were up to?" And maybe this could be something that's set 400 years in the timeline, or 600 or 700 years before the timeline. And we actually had a lot of good debates about that. Um, and then the game came out. Um, I have to be honest with you. I never completed it. I kind of
Really?
I never completed it. No, no, I never completed it.
Wow.
Um, yeah, I. It's not to say it's a bad game. I just think that if the Mass Effect title was ripped away from it and it was its own thing, potentially it could have worked. The way I look at it is, it's the movie Alien Covenant that you're playing, because if memory serves me correctly, you're basically looking for a new home, and you've got this ship that you're fucking piloting or whatever, and you have all these citizens on it or something like that. I think maybe I'm completely butchering it, but that's how much I care for this game. Um, but I specifically remember you were called the Pathfinder,
Yeah.
and you were either the male or the female, and during this time, either your brother or your sister goes into like a hypersleep coma or something like that because their stasis pod was damaged when your ship that you were in got attacked or something like that, or gravity went or some shit. You know, bizarre as it sounds, it plays very well. And having the jetpack was kind of cool. I believe there was a jetpack kind of thing, where you could zip about the place. Um,
I think the class customization was very strong as well.
yeah, yeah. It was
Like
it
you had
was
a lot
very
of
quick.
freedom. Like the
Yeah,
gameplay wasn't terrible. Like there was a lot of options there. Um, you could essentially switch on the fly between being like a biotic or a tech class or any of that kind of stuff. I
yeah,
think that was a great idea in concept, but
yeah. My
it just
issue, my issue with it is we were so spoilt by the Shepherd story and the Shepherd saga that how do you possibly top that, or how do you even move away from that? It's next to impossible for a title to reach that kind of magnitude. Um, and I know I was kind of treating it as its own thing, but I was in the back of my mind, I was like, yeah, but Garrus isn't here. Yeah, but Rex isn't here. Like, I didn't give a shit about any of the side characters at all. Like the female Turian was really cool. I can't remember her name.
I don't
Um,
remember most of their names. Yeah,
yeah, I don't know, man. It's just
I think they obviously Andromeda was clearly intended as kind of the beginning of a new trilogy. Because the game even ends with like the secondary villain being like, "Oh, I'm coming for you now, motherfuckers." Um, and that was like, okay, I guess that's a thing. But even,
mm,
excuse me, The game only introduced 2 new alien species in a different galaxy.
Really? Because
Excuse me.
I know that bless you, I know that the Asari are in it, the Turians are in it, and this is my biggest problem with not that I had problems with these characters or these races in particular. Like to kind of harken back to like the original trilogy of Mass Effect, I found the alien characters to be so much more interesting and endearing, and I wanted to learn more about them. Whereas I didn't really give two rats about Caden or Ashley. Whereas in Mass Effect
Yeah,
Andromeda, I didn't really give a shit about any of the characters that I was talking to because the story didn't make sense to me. Um,
yeah.
as bizarre as this sounds, and I know it's made by the same studio and the same company, it just reminded me of Dragon Age with plasma rifles. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
I
Like
kind of seen that.
especially Dragon Age Origins or Inquisition, should I say, where
Yeah.
you're making habitats in all these different places. Um, like the gameplay was fine. The gunplay was excellent. It was quite quick.
Hmm.
It would actually always remind you of Vanquish, I suppose. Is that what it's called? Or
Yeah, a little bit.
um, but I don't know. Who were the two species that they introduced? The Krell were
So,
one of them, weren't they? The Krell, they were like the
there
bad
you go.
guys.
Yeah, there was the Krell and the. I can't even remember them. They
Yeah,
were they were those kind of scaly. They had like long flappy things on the sides of their heads. I legit can't fucking remember the name of them, but that's the problem. They had no real identity other than we're the new alien species.
yeah, okay.
And even the fucking was it the Drell or the Krell or whatever the hell they were called?
The Krell, yeah.
They were just the collectors again because their whole thing was that they were other species converted.
Are you talking about the Angara?
Angara, that was
Yeah,
it.
I had a feeling it was one of those. Yeah,
Yeah,
Angara.
and that was it.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
I'm sorry, you traveled 600 years to this new galaxy and you meet 2 new alien races.
yeah. That's a bit fucking. Yeah,
And
that's a bit
I
empty.
understand. I understand that they brought for obviously they brought the Solarians, Krogans, Asari, and Turians
Mm,
over to the new galaxy with them,
yeah,
and they all had their own ship essentially.
yeah,
They didn't think to bring the Drell, the Volus,
yeah. The,
the
the
Hanar,
Hanar.
whatever
Yeah,
Hanar.
yeah,
Like, why are they not coming?
yeah,
You know, that shit
yeah.
really bothered me.
I don't know, like for like because we had like our own dialogue about it. It's like, oh well, what's going to happen and um, how is it going to play and such. And let's not forget that when it did launch, the facial animations, where it was like, what in God's name? It was almost like every character had giant googly eyes like stapled to their head. It looked really really bad. Um, but I can't even remember how far I got in the game, to be honest with you. I think it was the story that was holding me back.
Yeah, well, see, the story is hot garbage.
Yeah.
But there's another issue as well, is that the actual worlds you explore are very bland. So I think you have they have like a snowy planet. Looks like every other snowy planet in a video game ever. They have the tropical planet. They have 2 desert planets.
Mm-hmm.
Explain that shit to me. Then
Yeah.
they have one actual alien planet, but it looks like someone vomited out AI art. Like it's just grotesque and not appealing. The colors are just all like it's very dark, and it's meant. Like you see alien planets where the kind of the plant life and everything is overgrown and kind of glows, and it's got this neon vibe to it. That was
Yeah.
clearly what
Yeah.
they were going for, but it looks like shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, I'm not talking about the graphics. I'm talking about the art direction. I think it looks like they had this awful idea, to be honest. And I'm normally I try not to be critical of artists, but this was just hideous. My
Where I
eyes were
think
dying.
where I think that could be a hangover from was, I think the artists were trying to diverge in a different track away from what the trilogy predecessor did, and I think they tried to do too much with their landscapes and they tried to make it too pretty, I think,
Yeah,
and that just doesn't work a lot of the time. Where it's almost like they're distracting you with this world that you're exploring to pull you away from the fact that the story that's being presented is pretty barren and linear. And I don't know, like it's not to say that I didn't enjoy my time with Andromeda, but I will say one thing: that mini map can go fuck itself. Fuck that mini map and everybody who looks like it. It
yeah,
was the most confusing. It was the most confusing thing to try. If I can't navigate through the game that I'm playing that I bought,
yeah.
I'm putting that aside, and it's like this is inexcusable. Um, but I don't know. I never completed it. I just didn't care. The character customization just looked strange as anything as well to me. When I tried to create my own Pathfinder or whatever their fucking name was, it looked like I was playing an early alpha, or they were an NPC from an early alpha or something like that. Now I don't know how true this
Yeah,
is,
the game. Yeah.
um, but I'd seen some clips on YouTube about Andromeda and like the top 10 secrets and Easter eggs in Mass Effect Andromeda. This was a while ago that I found this. And there's a scene where you can visit your dad's old letters or archives on his laptop or something. And he's speaking with Liara Tassoni about what's been going on. And I think this was before she met Shepard, I think. But you can also find another um, voice note from Liara about what's going on with the Reaper War, and she said that they lost, which was kind of interesting because now I'm like, okay, so does that completely retcon the choose your own color palette ending, or was
So that's kind of an issue with the kind of the main that the kind of mystery behind the Pathfinder's dad. Um, there are memories you can unlock because you get the AI
that's
that
the
was in.
one? That's the
Yeah,
fucking one. Yeah,
but yeah, you get access to the AI that was partnered with your dad, and it's like, oh, there are certain memories that you have to unlock, and it's like, well, why are these memories locked? Did the guy know that he was going to die and sacrifice himself and give me access?
yeah,
Um, so you have to go to certain locations in the environment in the worlds, which for some reason, even though the guy has never been to any of these places,
yeah,
and it unlocks these memories, and then you go back to the ship and you explore his room, and it'll tell you a bit about kind of the preamble. So part of it is that when prior to the events of the game, the Pathfinder and your brother slash sister say goodbye to their mother, who they believe passed away.
right.
As it turns out, the mother is frozen on the ship,
Oh,
alive, awaiting a cure for her ailment. Uh,
okay.
it's actually part of the reason why the dad came out here in the first place to find a cure or some shit. It gets weirder because it shows that he had been in contact with someone mysterious. Now, you don't find out the identity of this person in this game. As I said, they were likely setting up a future trilogy.
Okay.
But there's essentially this person is speaking to the dad. You're witnessing it through his memory video thing, and as they speak, it's like on a video call,
Yeah,
and the video keeps changing. So like 1 second they're a male human, the next they're a female Solarian, and so it's clearly like a filter that they're talking through to hide their identity.
right.
Now, a big theory for who that was the elusive man, because this person is
Oh,
apparently, yeah, this person has apparently funded a lot of this Pathfinder exercise.
that's interesting.
Um, yeah, and it's kind of like, okay, there's actually an interesting mystery here. Never going to pay off. Also, I'm sorry. Why did he not tell the kids that their mother was frozen on the ship?
Yeah, that's fair.
Because
Yeah,
one of the things, a decision you have to make early on in the game is whether or not you are going to release certain people from, uh,
Cryosleep.
cryosleep. And you don't know that one of those people could be your fucking mother.
That's video game fucking narrative 101, isn't it?
But there you go. The thing of it is that decision doesn't impact the whole mother storyline.
Mm.
Because you don't know at the time you make that decision.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, that could have been useful.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
Good to
Like,
know.
it's, yeah, thanks, Dad. I mean, it just, I don't know. It kind of fell off the wayside for me, to be honest with you. I just, it was a great distraction game. Um, but I wasn't overly invested in the title itself. I thought the companions that you were with were just, they were so one dimensional and just fucking annoying. Like that one Asari that you're with, like I can't remember her fucking name, but she was overly exaggeratingly cheerful and all this, and I could see what they were trying to do. They were trying to make her as like the cute little sister who's alien, so she'd be great as a romance option. So you can always choose her, that kind of thing. But I never finished the game, and I really didn't give a shit about it either. To be honest, I know I'm adding
Yeah.
more gasoline to the bonfire of hatred that I have for Mass Effect Andromeda, but I just didn't care about it.
But that's exactly it, man. Like, you're not alone. There was clearly a huge amount of backlash to the game, rightly so. It just kind of did everything wrong.
Yeah,
Uh, Now we're getting a new Mass Effect game that's clearly following on from the original trilogy.
I don't know how they're going to do this.
That's
I,
the problem.
I
Is
haven't a clue logically how they could do this. What do you think?
I don't. I'm personally of the opinion that the Mass Effect, the Shepard storyline is done. I don't need a game that follows on directly from that story. I don't need a game like I think the concept of Andromeda, in that it was this idea of, okay, we're gonna get away from the story of Mass Effect, of Shepard's story, so that we can tell an original story. I think that was a good idea on paper,
Yeah,
but it was poorly executed.
agreed.
Because it almost gave them the freedom to tell a new story, unburdened by the story of the Reapers and the decisions you had to make in those games.
Hmm.
But then they tried so hard to tie shit back to those games. It's like, no, be new, do new things. And they also mucked up the new things they tried, so poo poo.
But the thing is,
Uh,
though, that just goes back to the Star Wars treatment as well.
yeah.
Like everything, in even if they wanted to go back to Mass Effect and do a whole new story, at I fucking bet you at some stage it's going to go back to Shepard. It's going to. It's the same with what Star Wars are doing now with like their every spin-off and movie that they're doing now. It somehow always goes back to the Skywalker family, and it's like there's a whole universe out there. Fucking try something different, like.
Yeah, like when they tried before, we got masterpieces like Knights of the Old Republic. You know,
Oh
it's
God, yeah.
there's so much you can do that doesn't have to revolve around that story. Like Mass Effect would have to go later into the timeline, I think, because at the time Mass Effect 1 takes place, Shepard and the humans are fairly new into the galactic sphere.
Yeah.
Now, you could do the First Contact War or any of that kind of stuff. It would have to be less of an RPG, though, because, again,
Yeah.
it couldn't contradict anything we know from the first three games.
Hmm.
But there's no reason you couldn't say jump to the next cycle. You know, like, okay, it's been 50,000 years. What's happened since?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's fucking science fiction. You can do whatever the hell you want.
But like they'll always go back to a formula that they know is just going to give them money, though.
Yeah.
That's the
Well,
problem.
I would blame the corporate side of that. It's like EA again. You know, they own the rights to all this. So BioWare, they tried something that wasn't the Shepard trilogy. It wasn't a success. And EA are like, well, people like the Shepard story. Let's go back and do that again.
Yeah. I just
It's like,
like logically, I don't know how they could possibly bring Shepard back. I don't understand it.
is
That would
Shepard
just,
confirmed to be back? By the way, like
this is
I
the thing,
know
right?
Liara and there's like a guest.
Yeah. So this is the big thing that like I was just so confused on. It was they're on this snowy planet which hasn't been confirmed, but I'm just going to call it Novaria just because that's the only snowy planet you visit in Mass Effect. In the Shepard trilogy, I believe. I think it's the only snowy planet you visit. I think you visit another one in Mass Effect 3. Anyway, it's this cutscene where Liara is there and she reaches down into the snow and picks up something and rubs her hand over it, and it's a piece of N7 chest plate armor. And then she looks towards the camera and it's like, we must continue on or something like that. But logically, it's going to completely destroy your choice for the ending for the entire trilogy. And you could look at it as many different angles, like which was the true ending, because realistically there was no true ending to Mass Effect 3. Not one of those endings is canon. But the weird thing is, like, if you chose the destroy ending, you wake up, like Shepard has that brief kind of you see their armor kind of breathing, I suppose, or their
Yeah.
chest rising and falling. So it's kind of like, well, was the destroy ending the canon one? That would mean all the Reapers are dead, but all AI life is dead, so the Geth are gone and Edie's gone. But like, that's a whole different a whole discussion for another video, I think, or another podcast. We could talk about that fucking thing for hours. But
Yeah, that's the
yeah,
thing, isn't it? It's Mass Effect. It's
it's huge. It's huge. I suppose just to well, maybe just to wrap the podcast up, like, is there one particular moment or a multitude of different moments that really struck you in the original game?
you know, I'm not a huge fan of the Citadel DLC in Mass Effect 3.
Oh shit!
I don't hate it, but I don't
I
love
think
it.
it's I think it's the most one of the worst DLCs they did.
Fair, and I can see why. But there is one moment of it that kind of speaks to me on a deeply personal level. And it's when all of the characters are there.
Oh
Kind of, oh, you're not a fan of that?
yeah, I love it. No, I love it. I'm going, oh, like, oh god.
Oh.
Yeah, I know the one you're
I
talking
just,
about.
it's just, it feels like a little encapsulated moment of like, you built up to this. These are the friends you made along the way. Here they are all standing by your side. I don't know.
Mm.
It's just kind of love it. Just a nice little moment. Now, I will say my overall favorite component of the Mass Effect trilogy is the suicide mission in Mass Effect 2.
Oh,
I think
big
it's
time.
I think it's my favorite ending to a game. It may be excluding the Terminator Reaper at the end. But the
Yeah, that
fact that it feels so natural going through, making decisions with your squad, picking who's going to be with you, who's going to do what tasks, and it just felt like a genuine, like, this is the final mission of this game. Better than anything
wholeheartedly,
I've ever seen in another video game. I love that
wholeheartedly
shit.
agree with you.
That shit was
Wholeheartedly,
mwah.
I wholeheartedly agree with you. Um, Pretty much, I'll echo on what you said there. Like, one of my favorite parts, even though the DLC is absolute dog shit, is from the Citadel DLC when it's at the end of the whole thing, and Shepard's kind of leaning on the railings at Bay D2, looking at the Normandy, and your love interest or whoever it might be comes up to you and puts their hand on your shoulder and says, "We've had a hell of a ride, haven't we?" And Shepard just nods slowly and says, "The best." And that for me, that was kind of like the team saying that, like, "Oh, we've had some hell of a ride," and then you as the player saying, "Yeah, you know what? We've had the best." So I really like that little part in
Yeah,
that DLC.
I think the Citadel DLC. I know it was obviously intended as kind of like a little celebration of the series at that point, because there's, when you're locked in that little tube and Shepard's talking about the whole "I should go" thing. So, okay, that's kind of funny.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, like as DLC, it's whatever. But no, I would say definitely the ending of Mass Effect 2, the ending mission
yeah.
would be for me the highlight of the franchise to
I'd,
date. Like, even now with Andromeda done, I'm not pushed on this new game. I'll wait and see when I get some gameplay. But that was announced like 2 years ago now, 3 years ago. I don't even remember when it was announced, and it's been nearly 10 years since Andromeda came out.
Jesus Christ, really? Really?
I think it was 2014.
Serious?
I need to look this up. I'm sorry.
Oh my
I know
god,
I'm
it's been that
derailing the
long.
conversation, but I need to know. Mass Effect Andromeda.
Really?
It was released. Bear with me. Oh, never mind. It was 2017. Jesus.
Okay, yeah, yeah, okay. Still though, like that's still a long time. Um, another
Okay, so 5 years after Mass Effect 3. That makes sense.
another moment from Mass Effect 3 that I really liked as well. Not to say it's one of my favorites, it kind of like struck a chord with me big time. Was I used to always romance Tally,
Yeah.
and it's in that last mission, like the final push towards Harbinger, when Shepard basically tells his crew, "Get out of here, get as far away as possible," and you put your crew back on the escape shuttle or the helicopter, whatever it was. And Tally was with me at this moment, and Shepard turns to her and goes, "Go back home to Rannoch, build a life there, build a life on your new home." And
Aw.
she looks to him and says, "But I have a home."
Oh,
And it was
my
like,
heart.
it was like you had to do that to me, didn't you? You absolute bitch. But yeah, I would say it's a toss up for me between the suicide mission, that whole lead up. You know, the music is so empowering, and it's like we're getting ready to kick the shit out of the collectors. And even then, probably the attack on the Citadel in the first game when Sovereign shows up and it's like, "Hey, we're going to smash you up," because you see then like, "Oh damn, like
Oh,
this is the real deal. This is the
that's
threat.
great.
Like this is the threat that we were told
Yeah.
about, and now it's on our doorstep." And it's like, "Oh dear God," you know?
It's one of my favorite tropes in fiction of the kind of the safe home space being attacked and destroyed,
Yeah, for
because
sure.
like the Citadel is this wondrous place in Mass Effect 1 that you can explore, and it's like a safe haven. Occasionally you'll get into like little firefights here and there, but it's this great space that you feel home in with all these other alien races. And then at the end of the game, obviously you're fighting your way through it. It's been attacked, all that kind of stuff. I love that shit in any fiction. Um, it's something I love that feeling of, oh man, they came after me personally on my home turf. I don't know, something
Yeah,
about that
they're
just
taking the
resonates with
fight
me.
to me, kind of thing.
Yeah, which is
Yeah,
like obviously a big part of the Mass Effect 3 intro. Is up to this point in the game you'd never even seen Earth in the whole
yeah,
trilogy, and then you're finally on Earth at the beginning of Mass Effect 3, and it's taken from you. So
yeah,
we as humans, yeah, okay, Earth is our actual home. So I get, it's personal. I
yeah.
dig that.
It really sets the game up um like in Mass Effect One, you had Sovereign attacking your home away from home, I suppose you could call it.
Yeah, Mass
Um,
Effect 2, the collectors blow up the Normandy.
yeah, so your home was literally stripped away from you.
Yeah,
And then
and you're killed.
yeah, and then in Mass Effect 3, it's like, no, your birthplace like is being attacked. They're taking the fight here. You know what I loved about the third game as well is like a good example is when you're on Palaven or the moon on Palaven, and you're hooking up with Garrus and the rest
Yeah.
of the Turians. In the distance, you can actually see the Reapers, and it's the closest you've ever been to them. And I used to just look at these things and just be like, "Whoa, like that is big," you know?
Oh yeah. Sure. I think I took a really cool screenshot with that photo mode for Mass Effect 3
Oh, you
in
did.
the
That's right. That's right.
in the Legendary Edition. Yeah, just really showing off the scale of the Reapers. That was a great addition, honestly, having the photo mode. I had some fun with that.
It needed a photo mode, though. It really did. There's some
Yeah, because
beautiful.
it's some great moments visually in those games, even in the original, especially with the facelift in the remaster.
That's it for sure.
Man, I love Mass Effect.
I'm glad we actually had this discussion about Mass Effect on this podcast, and I must say it's always a pleasure hanging out with you in a digital space. But I suppose we should start
Woo.
wrapping it up then, right?
Yeah. So I suppose thanks everybody for listening. Let us know if this is the kind of content you want to see us do going forward. We think we were really happy when we came up with the let's talk about idea, because it really just opens us up to talk about almost anything. It's a real avenue for us to break away from the format that we were kind of stuck in with retrospectives, which, while we did enjoy, they were quite restrictive, because they
Mm-hmm.
were a huge time sink. We both work full time jobs and have lives, so it was difficult to kind of make them work.
Yeah,
So this is kind of a new way for us to talk about video games for an hour or 2 hours, whatever. Like, no time limit, really. Just shoot the shit and talk about a subject.
yeah, yeah. Absolutely. There's not as much heavy lifting when it comes to these kind of topics. We can just gush and things like this. But I suppose, thank you once again, just echoing what Shepard said there. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in, for listening. And we hope to see you on the next edition of The Save Point. So signing off on The Save Point, I have been your host, Joker.
And I've been your co-host, Shepard. Thanks for listening.
Take it easy, guys.